Hey guys. Okay, I'll wait for whoever's gonna join to join again. And like I said, if I didn't get to your question in the last live, sorry. Just ask it again if you can. I don't always see all the questions coming in because I'm kind of like, behind. So if I didn't get to your question, just ask it again. I had to look up B17 because one of you guys, Christina, asked about B17, and I was like, what is B17? I think it's like, it has something to do with apricots, but I'm not sure. So I had to like Google it. And it's talking about B17 being illegal. It's amygdalin is a highly controversial alternative cancer treatment. It's banned in many states by the FDA because it is ineffective at treating cancer and may cause cyanide poisoning. Whenever that's the first response on Google, I'm always like, that's very like, let's just see it. And when things are like cancer cure or hoax, like I'm always like, is it though? So apricot seeds, honestly, I don't have much of an opinion on it. Remember, guys, though, that cancer is mostly a metabolic illness, so it occurs when the cells are compensating for stress it's been under for quite some time. I highly recommend listening to Jodelle Fit on YouTube. She did an interview with Georgi Dinkov or Hidut. He's a wizard, dude, a wizard. But he is so smart, and he talks about cancer a lot in that podcast. I think it came out like last week or so. And he drops a lot of bombs about cancer. It's really interesting. And it's definitely something that we think is like this big bad wolf, like cancer's invading my body like an alien. And I'm like, no, like we're looking at it completely wrong. It's literally the body compensating for years and years and years and years and years and years of stress it's been under. And it's doing something for protection that ends up being something that is so actually damaging. But it's not something that we should be like, oh my gosh, it's like this like crazy illness. It's really, we're very much kept in the dark. So I just highly recommend looking into that. I like sometimes fear talking too much about certain things here because like I get censored. Best way to support bile flow to lower cholesterol. Oh, I really like, I talked about it in the last live, I really like this supplement called Unikey, by Unikey. It's called Bile Builder. It has like taurine in it and ox bile and things like that, which are really helpful for getting the gallbladder flowing. But making sure our digestive enzyme function is good, hydrochloric acid function is good, and our thyroid function is good is really important to get our bile flow going. Because remember, when we have high cholesterol, we usually have thyroid issues. Hello, Jessica. Hello, Nicole. I think your name is Nicola, but I don't want to be presumptuous, so clarify me. Oh, it's snowing? Oh my gosh. I haven't seen snow in like 5 years. I live in Southern California, and it snowed once here like 5 years ago, and it was like 4 inches of snow, and I swear to you, all these Southern Californian suburbians were like frolicking in this 4 inches of snow like it has snowed 2 feet. It was freaking hilarious, and it was so sad. Hi Jess, have you watched Heal on Netflix? Thoughts? I haven't. I don't watch these propaganda Netflix documentaries because I don't want to fill my head with that garbage. But I absolutely can. Some of you guys asked me about some of the documentaries on there, so I'm not really sure what it's about. I guess I brought my iPad because Google is my friend, so I guess I could look it up right now. While I talk, I'll answer the next. You make me laugh so hard, your facial expression's right there, and you're so right. Oh. I am like quite the cynic about everything, which is partially why I always like don't take anyone's word for it, and I never knew it would get me places. I have Hashimoto's and take Synthroid and thyroid supporting supplements. Been gluten-free and dairy-free for over a year. Really watch what I eat and eat enough, but my weight is out of control. Help. It's one of those things where, well, when it comes to Synthroid, keep in mind it is synthetic T4, and it is, remember, T3 is the thing that actually energizes the cell and supports the metabolism. And so if T4 is not converting to T3, which mostly happens in the liver and the digestive tract, then, it's useless. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. So do you get your free T3 levels tested and your reverse T3 levels tested? A lot of times hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's is happening because of inflammation in the body, lots of thyroid destroying compounds like estrogen, and lots of phytoestrogens like coming from the diet, lots of heavy metals. And Hashimoto's, like, is there are two schools of thoughts regarding Hashimoto's, right? There's, like, the autoimmune thought that, like, the body attacks itself. And it's like, the body's not stupid. There's also another school of thought, and a lot of people think this way, where when you have antibodies, it's not that your body's attacking the thyroid tissue, it's a sign that there is inflammation of the thyroid tissue. And I would tend to, like, after I've looked at a lot of the research, I would tend to lean more that way than the fact that the body's just attacking its own thyroid. And I've seen that personally. You know, I had high Hashimoto's antibodies. Like, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's like 5 years ago, but I had excess of estrogen and all these things. And when I just focused on my hormones and got my minerals balanced and, you know, really focused on nourishment, I went away, you know, because it was like I was focusing on why it happened in the first place. So when it comes to hypothyroidism, and you're taking thyroid supplements, keep in mind it's not a thyroid medication deficiency. There's a real reason why that's occurring, and we have to be the ones that take responsibility and practice awareness. Is my T4 converting to T3 properly, or is this medication that I'm taking not converting at all? A lot of people with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's are having a conversion issue, and they're not having an actual, like, it's not that they are deficient in T4, it's that they're not converting T4 to T3 very well. But a lot of times Hashimoto's is being driven by other things like excess estrogen, inflammation, and that type of thing. So I would really look to balance my blood sugar, support my body by lowering stress. You know, the basic things that I always talk about here are really true for every single person, regardless of what we're struggling with, because we have to make sure we have the fundamentals. If our cells don't have the minerals that they need and our body doesn't have the nourishment or the fuel it needs, why in the heck do we expect to heal? All these people are so focused on what we shouldn't be eating. No sugar, no dairy, no soy, no this, no that we forget what the heck are we actually eating. And a lot of people are eating foods that are not biologically appropriate. They're eating tons of cruciferous vegetables. Would you ever, if you were starving, hunting man, walk by a bush and say, that looks so good, I'm gonna eat this bush? Like, no, you would never do that. So you have to think of it in the sense of, like, what are you naturally attracted to? Like meats and fats and butter and cream and you know, fruits and root vegetables. Like, those make you want to be like, that's so good. There's a reason your tongue is telling you what your body needs. And we, like, force, you know, from a young age, we're told, like, eat your vegetables. Like, and you watch kids being forced to eat their vegetables, and they're like, you know, like I can't eat it, or they're like choking it down. And there's a reason. They're super wise. They're super in tune with their bodies. And that was a big long rant. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people think they're eating healthy because they're gluten and dairy free. And I always tell my clients, if a practitioner just tells you, the first thing that they tell you is go gluten and dairy free, run away, because there's way more to nutrition than just what you're not eating. It's really important to understand that how you eat and what you eat is going to make or break you. And it's not just like, oh, I'm eating gluten-free. It's, what are you eating? Are you getting your carbohydrates from grain sources or roots and fruits? Are you in squashes? Are you getting your protein from high quality meats and broths and eating, you know, mimicking nose to tail eating, making sure you're balancing your amino acids? Are you getting the right types of fats, which are saturated fats? You know, you're an animal, you're made up of saturated fats. Why do we think like putting plant fats in our body are going to help us build a body? Have you ever seen an avocado just sit on a hot counter and like turn that ugly, hideous brown when it's exposed to oxygen and light and heat? Your body's oxygen and light and heat, baby. So, you know, just thinking of our biology, what's biologically appropriate for us. A lot of times just shifting nutrition is life-changing for people, but also making sure we're practicing the right habits as well. And that was just a long rant to say that it could be a nutrition issue, or it could be other things. Like there's a lack of conversion happening, maybe cellular hypothyroidism because of magnesium deficiency or potassium deficiency or something like that. So there could be a lot of reasons why you're feeling like your metabolism is just slow. Okay, I looked up that documentary Heal, and I'm just keeping an eye on like what it is. Scientists and spiritual teachers discuss how thoughts, beliefs, and emotions impact human health and the ability to heal. Interesting. I see like the medical medium's picture on here, and you guys know how I feel about the medical medium. Like, oh, it's creepy to me. Yeah, I mean, I see some people that I like. So yeah, I don't know. I need to watch it, but I definitely believe your emotions and your thoughts have absolute 100% power. I've seen so many people that struggle with trauma, that have tried everything. They're doing all the right habits on a physical level, but their trauma is holding them back from healing, and they have to work through that before they truly heal physically. Because we tend to separate as humans mental and physical health, and it's impossible to do so, you guys. I know we as humans love to see black and white, but it's so interconnected, and it's very difficult to heal physically if we can't heal emotionally and mentally. Grief, guilt, and shame tend to be the worst emotions for detoxification and metabolic health, because they just hold right in that belly area, like right in this area, and it just like sometimes that anger and that guilt and that shame, it just holds us back so much. So it's very important to understand that our mental and emotional health absolutely affects our physical health. What are your thoughts on using osteopathic practices for treatment of digestive concerns such as oily stools, gas, bloating? I don't know, what practices are you talking about? Like just all of them or specific ones? It's important to, if you're having like oily stools or gas and bloating, there's digestive issues going on. You know, like we're not eating the right thing, our bile flow is poor, we're not digesting fats very well, that type of thing. So we need to address a possible issue. And sometimes it's basic, like nutrition, and sometimes it's a little more in depth. Living internationally, but coming back to the US for a few weeks in December, would love to do some gut testing and mineral analysis, wondering how long these tests take to process. Any recommendations? When it comes to HTMA, it's pretty quick. It's like snappy. You get the test, you can take it as quickly as you can chop your hair off, and you send it in. And when I say chop your hair off, I don't mean like, it's not scary. It's a small amount, about a teaspoon of hair. And when it comes to gut testing, it does take a little longer. And it's one of those things where it's not necessary for everyone. I think sometimes like I like to evaluate habits first before you just drop the $430 on gut testing. I sometimes like to say like, what are your current habits? What are you eating? Like that type of thing. What are your symptoms? A lot of times just by healing the metabolism and balancing minerals, you tend to see your digestive function just improve, just because minerals are the foundation of the cells, and the cells, you know, your intestines, your stomach, everything is made up of cells in your body. So it's important that your cells are functioning properly. But yeah, I mean, the HTMA could be done pretty snappy. If you're going to be home for like less than a month, then we would just have to get you in and get you out. I'm opening up new spots in, like right in January. Hi, Jess. Hi, girl. Oh, no, it's Linda. Oh, I'm sorry. I called you Nicole, and your name is Linda. What is your opinion on blood in the stool could mean asking for someone else? Well, usually if someone has blood in the stool, I recommend like go get checked out, especially if it's a lot. I mean, sometimes it could just be like anal fissures, or like hemorrhoids or something like that. But of course, you want to make sure that it's not something more serious, because blood in the stool could be some really serious stuff. So if there's blood, usually a good idea, like go check it out. Oh, please spell the bile support supplement again. Unikey, Unikey, and it's called Bile Builder. Like Bob the Builder, but like Bile Builder, you know. Hi, Jess. Loving these potato recipes on FN. Should us PCOS insulin-resistant ladies stay away? I tend to have them twice a day, depending on the leftovers I've prepared. It's a better idea. So when it comes to insulin resistance, remember, guys, carbs don't cause insulin resistance as much as the free fatty acids free in our bloodstream do. Keep in mind the cells is not responding to the hormone insulin. Insulin's like a key that lets glucose or energy into the cell for a reason, right? The cell's kind of stressed out. So magnesium is really important for women with PCOS, as is potassium. A lot of times women with PCOS are deficient in those two. I would say magnesium mostly. So it's important to make sure you're getting the right minerals. It's also important to make sure you're doing some type of fructose with starches. So keep in mind, like root vegetables, specifically potatoes, are pure starch. Every woman's very different as to how she handles potatoes. Some women find that when they're eating potatoes, they have to be a little bit lower fat with that meal in order to see their blood sugar stay stable, and that's okay. Some women, like for myself, I always will pair, instead of having a whole potato, I'll have like a half a potato, and then I'll drink some orange juice or some juice alongside of it, or eat some fruit with it, so that the fructose helps with the insulin response a little bit. So I usually would say play around with it, but if you're getting most of your carbohydrates from roots and fruits and squashes, you usually tend to do okay. It's usually the overconsumption of grains and beans that becomes a problem with insulin resistant women. But again, that's kind of like unique to the woman, so I would like play around with it as long as you're seeing some results and you're feeling pretty good. And if you wanted to check in with your blood sugar, it would probably be a good idea at some point, especially if you're worried about insulin resistance. And I was going to say, it's actually better, this is a no, when it comes to potatoes, when you actually cook potatoes and then like put them in the fridge and then warm them back up, you've actually created a resistant starch, which is awesome for your gut bacteria. So you're unintentionally doing something even more awesome for your gut by using potatoes that are leftovers. And so that is probably even better for insulin resistance, because once you've cooked a potato and then cooled it, the starch has become this really interesting compound that's not digested like other starches. So I would say it's probably gonna work okay. Is it possible to have high testosterone, low progesterone, but normal estrogen? Oh yeah, it's possible. Keep in mind, guys, that the bloodstream is like a highway for hormones, so it's not where hormones are stored. A lot of women have a lot of estrogen stored up in their tissues, specifically their fat cells, and so a lot of times they think they have normal estrogen, but if they have estrogen dominant symptoms like heavy periods, moody PMS, sore and tender breasts, pain around ovulation or like cramping around ovulation, really bad cramps during their period, headaches or migraines, and I already said anxiety, depression around period. What else? Vaginal aching. Those can all be signs of estrogen dominance. And I sometimes say, like, if you have normal estrogen, but you are experiencing estrogen dominant symptoms, it's a good idea to probably assume there's some estrogen stored up in the tissues that can move once you speed up your metabolism. A lot of women are slow metabolizers. They have really slow metabolism, and so what's happening is the body's kind of like prioritizing just functioning and surviving and pushing anything it possibly can into storage to deal with later. It goes for metals, it goes for copper, it goes for iron, it goes for estrogen. And so when you have low progesterone, it's not balancing out estrogen, and keep in mind you need progesterone in the picture to mobilize estrogen from the tissues. And so a lot of times when women will supplement progesterone, or they get their progesterone levels up, they get themselves ovulating again, they start to see estrogen dominant symptoms just flood their body because now they're actually moving estrogen. So that was a long way of saying that, yeah, it's absolutely possible to have high testosterone, low estrogen, or normal estrogen and low progesterone, but highly unlikely. Do you have a podcast? I don't, but I know you guys want one. And so this year it's going to be YouTube channel, podcast, middle of the year. That's the goal. YouTube channel at the beginning of the year. It's in the works. It's pretty much golden. You see my YouTube background right now. I have an editor lined up, like where the ball is moving. Because I know you guys like to see what I eat in a day and like what I do in a day, my workouts, that kind of thing. And then podcasting, you guys seem to like to hear me talk. And so that is going to be the next thing. I already have like an editor and a producer lined up as well. So it's moving. It's moving. What are your top tips for dealing with chronic stress that has shown itself through anxiety disorder and PCOS? So I highly recommend, if you haven't already watched my highlight story labeled stress, That is the goal. But honestly, guys, utilize nutrition to your advantage. There's so much misinformation out there about like go gluten-free and dairy-free and sugar-free and all these things free. And I'm like, what the heck are you actually nourishing your body with? Do you think that your body's going to feel safe if it's not getting the nourishment that it needs? No. And so don't avoid sugars that are good for you. I call them sugar with nutrients. Things like fruits and fruit juices and like root vegetables, starchy vegetables, squashes, and then but make sure you're combining them with the right things, the saturated fats, the high quality proteins, the variety of proteins, because that's going to really keep blood sugar balanced. And eating every 3 to 4 hours, like stop experimenting with fasting and keto and all that junk and get your body nourished. Stop forcing it to feel like it's in a famine at any moment and give it the fuel it needs pretty regularly, and do that consistently for like 6 weeks and then watch what happens. And you'll see that your stress and anxiety do sometimes improve. I shouldn't say it will improve, but a lot of times it does improve just by simply getting more nourishment into the body and avoiding all of these non-foods, things like nut juices, aka almond milk and things like that. Lots of like people are eating like lots of salads and like rabbit food, lots of cruciferous vegetables and things, and it's like those are very bulky foods that are hard to break down and provide very little nutrients and calories in exchange. So you're forcing your body to break something down, and it's probably burning more calories and energy breaking that thing down than it's actually extracting from that thing, and so that's kind of stressful. So and then just prioritizing sleep. Making sure you're getting enough minerals. Magnesium and potassium are really important, but sodium is also important. But yeah, when someone has PCOS and anxiety, I'm looking for copper, possible copper toxicity and low magnesium and low sodium and potassium and things like that as well, because I always want to make sure that the cells have the fundamentals that they need before I start going like, oh, it's hormones or it's gut, because yeah, it is. The gut's struggling. The hormones are struggling because the cells themselves are struggling. But remember, guys, foundational things. Minerals, nutrients, and nothing can heal until you get those two foundational things dealt with. You mentioned in your H2MA story to balance calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium first. How much potassium, and can potassium affect iodine uptake? It can, but the things that affect iodine uptake more are going to be like some B vitamins, vitamin C, zinc, selenium, all the cofactors of iodine. But when it comes to potassium, our daily needs are pretty high, like around 4,500 milligrams. So, when you actually start to look at the potassium content in foods, you're like, whoa, 4,500 milligrams is a lot. So usually I give my clients a variety of sources. Like I'll say have a liter of coconut water plus potassium broth plus beet juice plus your potassium supplement. So it just kind of depends, but usually supplementing anywhere from and again, this is very speculative because I don't want to give individual advice. It's very different for each person, and really you don't want to just supplement high amounts of potassium when you don't know where your potassium levels are at all. But usually getting 500 milligrams or so from a supplement is usually pretty reasonable. I've never heard of potassium affecting iodine uptake. Going to eat this bush, yeah. Do you eat the whole animal, like brain, pancreas, etc.? Or do you mostly do liver and marrow and all of that? Just curious. I want to do more nose to tail, but it's tough to get there mentally. Yeah, it's one of those things where when I started my business, I moved back in with my parents for a while to make sure that I wasn't going to be struggling. And so I'm just getting ready to stop renting from them, get out of the house. And so it's one of those things where you kind of I've tried to oversimplify my life in certain aspects just because I'm trying to be conscientious that I'm not in my own space. But you get to a point where you're kind of sick of that, and I do want to get to a point where I maybe I'm gonna experiment with, maybe I have a local butcher that's really good about he'll break down liver and put it into my ground beef, or he'll take some brain and like mix it into the ground beef. But it's kind of mentally, it is not very delicious, and I'm not quite there yet. I've ground heart into the ground beef, and I've ground liver into the ground beef, and I would say that is probably the best way for me to hide it, because I don't really like liver, I don't really like heart, but you can't really taste it when it's like 80-20 ground. But like brain is not something, like that's not something that I'm there yet, but of course, like I'm always gonna like experiment and figure out ways to possibly get that in. But I still will do like grass-fed beef brain, supplements, like from Ancestral Supplements. So I don't do completely nose to tail eating. I try to mimic it as much as possible, just drinking bone broth, taking collagen and gelatin, doing, some organ meats here and there. It doesn't take very much. And then doing just grass-fed meats as much as possible, but I don't stress about it. When I say like nose to tail eating, I'm more just encouraging you to make sure that you're getting gelatinous foods, collagenous foods, some broths here and there, and you're balancing that out with that. That's why I implement collagen so much and gelatin so much in Fully Nourished, because that at least will balance out the muscle meats. But yeah, I mean, I always encourage, if you can like tolerate it and you're all down to like make some kidney and eat that straight up, like go for it. It's so good for you. I just get to a point where I'm just like, I can't yet. That doesn't mean never, and I'm probably going to experiment a million times how to cook it to the point where like I can tolerate it. I'm just not there yet. I'm also not a huge fan of eating like too many organ meats to the point where you're getting like so much iron. Like for example, the kidney and the liver are super dense in iron, which is not bad, but if you're doing those every day, that can be a problem. Or like, even a couple times a week, that could be a problem. So you don't need to do a ton of organ meats to get the benefits of it. I've been meaning to email you to work one-on-one with you. Are you okay working with clients in Toronto, Canada? And how long is the wait list now? Thank you so much. I don't have a wait list. I'm not doing that. I did that at the beginning of this year, and it ended up being like an absolute disaster. Like it was just seriously like the worst headache on the planet. So for the sake of just simplicity, I'm just telling everyone that I will be opening up spots in January 2020. And right now you're going to see a lot of updates to my website. So right now, like all of my old packages are up there, my old lab tests. And so everything is being renovated. It's just, I do everything on my own. So it takes time, but by January 2020, you'll see like everything's updated, and you'll be available to apply to work with me. So we're not doing a waiting list just because it just ends up being too much of a hassle. Any recommendations for non-toxic perfume or body spray? Yeah, so like just a trick, if you guys really have perfumes that you like I made the mistake of just like I used to love perfume, and I used to have like so many. I love smelling good, and I used to have like 10 or 15 that were just like like if anyone has smelled like Britney Spears perfumes, like I don't know why I love them so much, but like Britney Spears perfumes and Paris Hilton perfumes were like my jam. I know they're like super basic, but like they smell so good. And then I just kind of like, when I got more into health and wellness, I kind of just like ran out of them and didn't repurchase because I was so afraid of the estrogens, just because fragrance was so estrogenic. But I did learn like recently, if you can spray them on your clothes and not your skin, they tend to be okay. Like breathing the scent in is not going to kill you. But I have been using the one that I get at Target. It's by, oh my gosh, it's called, oh my gosh. It's like these like more natural perfumes. One of them is called, oh my gosh, I want to like go into my bathroom right now and like get it because I literally, Good Chemistry. So I've been like kind of using those, but I still am kind of afraid they're not as like non-toxic as they're saying they are. So I still like kind of spray them on my clothes. And then actually like my signature scent is just rose water. Like I buy just straight up rose water and like spritz it all over my body. And it's really refreshing. Like it just feels really good. But I know that there is some more like perfumes that are a little bit more like high-end and bougie and more natural that I've kind of wanted to experiment with. I also kind of want to experiment with like making my own, but I'm sorry I don't have more recommendations. I just haven't like gotten around to really digging into that yet, and I've kind of been happy with like my rose water and Good Chemistry blend. But yeah, I bought my mom one for her birthday like a month ago, and it was called something bee, like Busy Bee or Boss Bee or something. Oh my gosh, that smells. Every time like I am in her vicinity, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that smells so good. Oh, it's called Queen Bee. I would love for you to have a podcast so I can listen to you and answer questions and drop knowledge bombs while I walk and not have to keep the video playing. Okay, yeah, okay. No, I really like to always hear your guys' opinions because I've had kind of like split. People like YouTube, and then some people just really like podcasts, and so it's like hard to please both, but it's something that like I will be actually taking my YouTube videos like of me talking and literally making them into a podcast until I can actually have like a sit down podcast. So just like give me a couple of months. There's always like so many things to do, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do a podcast, and I can't wait to do this, and then when I actually like sit down to make it happen, I'm like, oh shit, like there's a lot more than I thought. Would you say your recipe inspiration in FN is modified paleo? I've been through almost all of them and looking to change it up, but along the same lines. Yeah, I would say it's like modified paleo. Just not so many like so hard on the vegetables, and just being like, I am not against grains. I think it's really important to do conscious grains. So properly prepared grains are going to be your best friend. Most women tend to be better if they avoid grains unless they're like properly fermented or sprouted or things like that, and they do them in kind of moderation. But yeah, I would say that's pretty much modified paleo, but I guess anything could be like technically modified paleo if we looked at it. But yeah, I would say like mostly, yes, just with a concentration of getting your carbohydrates from roots and fruits, and then don't skimp on the dairy if you can tolerate it pretty well. Hi Jessica, top tips for pregnancy. Can I keep taking chlorophyll during pregnancy? That's kind of something you need to check with your doctor. I usually recommend just like being pretty skimpy with your supplements unless you know it's benefiting you. I personally wouldn't take anything that's going to be like harshly detoxifying during pregnancy, but chlorophyll tends to be pretty gentle, but again, like just clear that with your doctor. Top tips for pregnancy are just nourishing yourself. Usually keep in mind the first trimester, your needs for protein almost double. And so it's so important to make sure you're getting enough protein or you'll get nauseous and you'll get morning sickness. Also, your needs for sodium tend to go up a little bit. So that's why a lot of women will get morning sickness, or they'll feel really like they'll get a lot of water retention, especially towards the end of pregnancy. It's because they're not understanding that like 10% of their minerals are just being shoved into that little being. And so it's very important to make sure minerals are at the top of our priority list, and just overall balancing our blood sugar and getting enough nutrients in general, because our thyroid does have to like pick up the slack. It's running the show for both you and baby for a little while. So overall, just like going harder on the nourishment, not focusing so much on like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to like detoxify and do this and do that. It's just mostly like, let's just let the body have what it needs so that I'm not the one that suffers. Because the once the baby implants and really once that egg gets fertilized, it's no longer about you, it's about that baby. And so it's really important to make sure that you have enough so that while your body is prioritizing baby, you're not the one that's going to be like suffering in the long run. But that's the biggest thing, is like, I think it's so important to just not stress during pregnancy. Like the biggest thing is to make sure you're having fun, you're enjoying yourself. Like your baby is listening to you, your baby is, really inside of your body. And so think of the sense of like when you're stressed out, your baby's stressed out. Like that baby is going to be the closest being ever to you. And so it's so important to just keep that in mind. Like what you're experiencing, that child is experiencing. And so it's just important to keep stress levels low. Like I can't stress that enough. If there's one thing to focus on, it's just keep stress levels low and keep your environment of stress low. Like if that gives you permission to say no more and avoid toxic people and do more things that you enjoy, like so be it. You're pregnant. Like that's a great excuse, right? Like, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm going to just go for a walk now. Bye. So just utilize the excuse a little bit. Like no one tells a pregnant lady no. What do you think of CBD oil as a treatment for anxiety disorder? You know what, Linda? I think it sometimes works for people, but sometimes it doesn't at all. I always think it's important, like, it's okay to use things that help with a symptom, right? Like if we're having anxiety, like, and CBD helps, like, of course, it's awesome. It's so great to not experience anxiety, but then we always have to acknowledge that that anxiety is happening for a reason. Anxiety is usually, think of it like, so when we're anxious, we're like fearful, we're kind of jumpy, we're kind of like aggressive, like we just kind of like, we're in a kind of like nervous state, right? Like we can, I guess everyone experiences anxiety in a little bit of a different way, but you could, I think we could both agree that that's a fight or flight state. Wouldn't that be how you would be if you're like running from an angry bear or being like hunted by a wolf? Like you would be like, something jumped at you or touched you and you'd like snap at them, right? That is what anxiety is. It's a heightened state of survival or fight or flight. And so we have to understand that anxiety is being driven by extreme stress, but what is that stress? And it's different for every single person. But a lot of times anxiety is being driven by a multitude of things. Usually it's nutrition related. I see it a lot with people who are like vegans and vegetarians or just not eating enough protein in general, not eating enough. Like sometimes people are just like not eating enough and they don't realize that they're just anxious because they're like hungry. Some people are just not sleeping enough. So, you want to evaluate your stressors, evaluate your nutrition, evaluate your diet and stuff like that. But if CBD works, like that's awesome. I really, really want to work with you one-on-one. When do you start taking new patients? I take clients, like I said, I'm taking them at the beginning of the year. When it comes to pregnant, like I don't work with a ton of women who are pregnant. That doesn't mean I don't. I just like women with PCOS tend to work with me because they want to get pregnant. But when it comes to pregnancy, it's really like, I think honestly, like fully nourished is really going to be very helpful because that's exactly how I would eat while pregnant. The only thing that I wouldn't do is like focus on detoxification. Like I wouldn't, do any coffee enemas, any castor oil packs, anything like that. Take any like harsh herbs. I would just be focused on making sure I'm nourishing myself well and not really worrying about anything else, making sure I'm getting enough sunlight, making sure I'm moving my body. I would encourage like strengthening the pelvic floor, making sure your core is really strong, because keep in mind, like pushing out a baby is not easy. And so it's important to make sure you're fairly strong. We always want to say, like, a lot of women don't understand that after pregnancy, a lot of times if we have a weak core, DR is always something that is a possibility, the ab separation or diastasis recti. So it's important to strengthen our core and our pelvic floor, before we have a baby, so that we don't have to struggle with core imbalances after we have a baby. But really overall, just preparing for childbirth, and nourishing our body so that our body can build a healthy baby, and then just being aware of our environment. But, it's not, don't overthink it. Don't overstress about it. Your body was made for it. That's a great idea to put it into ground beef. I'm glad you shared that. Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm not going to just, like, be a Khaleesi and, like, sit there and eat the heart. Like, no way. What do you think of the balanced supplements? Balanced supplements. Are you talking about Dr. Brighton's balanced supplements? There's also one by Alani Nu, I believe. What balanced supplements are you talking about? I love when you make fun of salads and broccoli. I do, and it's so funny because, like, all these women in Fully Nourished are like, is it okay that, like, I never want to eat a leafy green again? And I'm like, I will literally, after keto, like, I don't think I'll ever touch a piece of kale. Like, I literally don't even want to touch it. I feel like I'm just going to burn my hand off. But yeah, I think that salads are kind of funny because it's just like, we're just sitting there like, like, we're like all, if you like watch a room full of people eat salad, it's like a bunch of humans trying to be rabbits, and it's just like really comical to me. Like, it's just funny. Do you recommend anything for face and skincare? I wanted to introduce retinol and hyaluronic acid to my routine, or should I focus on collagen supplements? I highly recommend checking out my friend Sarah at Healthy Skin Glows. I love her program. She's just really good at, like, she's not like all natural. Like, she's not going to tell you to like slather your face and, whatever. She's very much like, she ranges from all natural skincare to like not so natural skincare, and she really helps you create a routine, especially if you have acne prone skin, that like helps restore your skin barrier and your skin microbiome. Like, she's really conscious about the actual biology of your skin. So I just really like her. I'm not the wizard when it comes to skincare. Like, I still like slather my face in beef tallow at night. So she is the one to look for with that. But I really like her recommendations. Like because of her recommendations, I use rose water for toner, which is awesome. I wash my face in the morning with raw honey, which is awesome. So like she has really like changed the way that I see skincare, and she has a lot of recommendations. And I'm actually re-going through her course, the skin rebalancing protocol, because I've been struggling with a little bit of dry skin. And so I was like, what serums do I need? Like, what do I need? And I kind of, I always trust her with her recommendations. You have the best personality. Oh, thank you. Not everyone thinks that. Do you have a sleep routine to wind down to get the best, fullest sleep? Yeah, I think anything that's going to help you relax. My sleep routine always changes just based on my schedule. I'm really like learning as a business owner. I hate the word entrepreneur because people are like, I'm an entrepreneur. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I am, but I hate that word. But as like a business owner, you know, you have so many things to do in a day. So many people relying on you, like so many things to think about. And I've really, like, I'll be honest, I've really struggled the past 6 months really shutting my brain off. Like I've been like obsessed with work and obsessed with the business to the point where it's like crippling to me. And this past week, that's why I took the week off last week from lives, and I actually like took a week off from answering emails because I just needed a break and I needed to like stop, like just take a break. And it was like almost like an addict, like for the first 2 days I was like, oh my gosh, like somebody probably needs me, like, oh my gosh, like what is in the DMs, you know? And then after a couple of days I was like relaxing, I was realizing like, okay, everything can wait, you know, like a day or two, it's gonna be okay. And so that's a long way of saying that I was really struggling with like shutting my brain down. I was not taking my own advice and working until like 10 p.m. and then just trying to go to bed. And I was finding myself literally dreaming about working with clients. Like I was working with clients during the day, and like while I was sleeping, I was working with clients. And so that was just very stressful. And so taking a hint from myself, my perfect bedtime routine is really shutting everything down by around 7 p.m. So anything that's like work related or like obviously ring light related gets shut down around 7 p.m. I start to wind down. I get comfortable. I wash my face. Sometimes I'll take a shower in the evening, but I don't like to go to bed with my hair wet. So I usually just like wash my face. I always walk around barefoot, so my feet are always so dirty, and so I like wash my feet. Like I just kind of get myself feeling really cozy. And then I will sometimes I'll watch a show like on Netflix like for an hour, or you know, I'll listen to a podcast. I'm really into true crime. Like I just do something that's gonna be a treat, you know, like I give myself a treat, whatever that might be for me that day. Sometimes I'll read a book. I really like to read, that's something not health related. And then sometimes I'll take a bath. Like right now it's so hot, I don't want to take a bath, but some women do really well with taking a bath, and sometimes I'll do that. And then I'll put magnesium oil on my stomach. I'll like brush and floss my teeth. Everything's kind of like ready for bed, and I just kind of relax. And like I said, I just kind of will, like I'll doodle, I'll color my coloring book. Sometimes I'm doing it while I'm watching a show. Sometimes I'm just sitting in silence. But the biggest thing that I'm doing is my environment is for sleep. My Himalayan pink salt lamp is on, my lights are off, and they've been off since 7 p.m. when I shut everything down. And I'm very careful. So my bedroom, my office, my bathroom all have amber tinted incandescent light bulbs or red tinted light bulbs. So even when I go to turn on the light, if I have to, it's a tinted light. It's not a bright LED fluorescent light, because that's gonna immediately bug me. If I have to go downstairs or I have to go somewhere where there's gonna be LED lighting, I pop those blue blocking glasses on. If I'm on a screen, blue blocking glasses are on. I'm making sure that the light that my body's exposed to, I'm remembering that light is information, and it tells my body what time it is to be awake and what time it is to go to sleep. And when the body responds to darkness by getting sleepy. And so the biggest thing I do is change out the light bulbs and keep the lights pretty dim. And like my iPad, you know, I have the I Googled how to like tint this thing red, and it's always on the lowest brightness and setting. Like if I'm, on my iPad, it's gonna be like the very dim and very red tinted. So I'm mostly conscious of my light. And then I'll have a bedtime snack before I go to bed. Usually it's like a cup of chocolate milk with some collagen or something like that. Something that has a little fat, a little protein, a little carbohydrate, but mostly carb and fat. So I can sleep, but I always make sure there's some sugar in it, or I'll have some ice cream or something like that. Just something to kind of like give myself some sugar so I can make it through the night really well. And then I'll if I didn't put magnesium on my belly, I'll take magnesium, and I'll usually just shut my lights off. And I'm not some like fancy person. It's just more about the environment and shutting things down so I can shut my brain down for about 2 hours before I head to bed, because you're really not gonna sleep well if your brain is just still like going, whether it's work, whether it's your relationship, whether it's whatever it is. You kind of need like some space and some time to breathe about an hour or two before you go to bed. Sorry, that was like such a long explanation for such a simple routine. Like I'm like, literally, my routine is so simple. Why did it take so long? I really appreciate your straight up attitude. It's so refreshing. Oh, I appreciate it. It's one of those things where I always talk about with my assistant and like everyone that it's something that I never want to lose, because I've watched so many people that like, their Instagram following maybe will increase, or they have information that needs to be shared with people, and all of a sudden this shift happens where they just like lose touch with people, or they stop helping people and they start just making it about themselves. And it's just like really weird to me. It's not something that I would ever really want to use Instagram for. But I always want my followers to keep me accountable for that as well. Like I always listen to you guys, what you're saying. Yay, I'm in Fully Nourished. Then you're good. Do you recommend prenatal vitamins that don't include iron? Well, we need iron for pregnancy. It's just, I think it's like maybe overused, but there are some really good prenatals, like Thorne's Basic Prenatal is really good. I highly recommend checking out Lily Nichols RD. She has some really good advice for prenatals. And she always talks about like the most important thing for pregnancy is like eating eggs with the yolk, and just some really good like practical advice. And she has a couple recommendations for prenatals on her website, I believe, that you can get for free. But I don't obviously like too much of her stuff. Like sometimes she's very low carb, low sugar, which I was like, that's the worst thing you can do during pregnancy, but like, don't sue me. But like she has some good recommendations for like nutrients, and she really, her book called Real Food for Pregnancy, she really talks to you about how to actually get all the nutrients you need for pregnancy from food, which is awesome, because a lot of times they're like, take these prenatals, take this, DHA, whatever, take all these supplements. And it's really refreshing to be able to get most things from food. OMG, between your Khaleesi heart comment and you saying people sitting around trying to eat like rabbits, my boyfriend made me leave the room for laughing so hard. That's how my brain thinks. I just like see people eating and I'm just like, that looks miserable. And I was one of those people once. This sounds nasty, but have you ever tried cooked spinach in a smoothie? Trying to get my vitamin K on check. You can get vitamin K on check just by like eating some baby leaves throughout the day. Like it takes minimal amounts of greens, I swear. Like you could just like, just take one little leaf and just be like, done. Or you can absolutely cook spinach and throw it in a smoothie. That's a great way to do it as well. It's not nasty. It's the best way. If you were going to get greens in, it's better to cook them first and then throw them in a smoothie than eat them raw. But yeah, you can definitely get some vitamin K through that. Do you eat anything raw other than your raw carrots? Sometimes I feel myself craving something fresh, like a raw cucumber or arugula salad. Do you not have that raw crisp craving ever? No, I totally do. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I totally listen to my cravings. Like I tend to like really like cucumbers when I'm like in the mood for like a crunch crave. I also really like bell peppers. Like I'll do red and orange and yellow, like so sweet, especially in the summertime. I also I never loved tomatoes until I got them from the farmer's market, where like they grow them fresh, and I would love to grow my own, and that's definitely a goal. It's just I'm not there yet. And I was just like, I want to eat like cherry tomatoes all day. So good. And yeah, like if arugula salad, like sometimes I'll even crave a salad, like, oh my gosh, sue me. And I'll usually have like a small salad. I'm just not going to sit there and like sometimes, okay, this is so funny. One time I watched this chick on YouTube. She's like a raw vegan. It was my raw vegan phase. I was like super into it. I was like, I am going to be a raw vegan. And I can't remember her name. I think it was like Bite Size Vegan or something. She literally sat there and ate like 20 heads of romaine lettuce. Like literally, she was just like, she's like folding them up and just like eating. She's like, yeah, I'm like cool with just having things be like pretty plain. And I was like, oh my gosh, every time I think of people eating salad, I just think of this chick just sitting there eating like 20 heads of romaine. I was like, how long did that take you? Probably like 90 minutes. Like seriously, an hour and a half to just eat your lunch and get enough calories from romaine. But anyways, yeah, I'll definitely have a craving for crunchy, like fresh salads, and I'll totally provide myself with that, if you know what I mean. I usually will do like easier to digest lettuces, like the lighter lettuces, like arugula is pretty good, or just like iceberg, or like just green lettuce or red lettuce or romaine or something like that. And I save like the kales and the Swiss chards and the things like that for cooking them when I have the hankering, which rarely do I crave like cooked up Swiss chard. However, Swiss chard cooked in like tallow or ghee or grass-fed butter is actually like super rich in vitamin K and super nutrient dense. I mean, greens are super nutrient dense when you cook them down and put them with fats. I just am all about like following your cravings. So if you're like, ugh, leafy greens are not working for me, or they digest really poorly, then don't eat them. But if you crave them and you want them, like go for it. There's nothing wrong with eating them. And I'll probably have a salad like once or twice a week with a meal. I just don't look at it as a meal any longer. You know what I mean? Like I don't say like, salads is going to nourish me. Like it's a really good complement to a meal. And I think eating it after a meal can sometimes be beneficial to kind of like brush things through. You're so beautiful. Hi. Oh, thank you, Ashley. What to do if I'm allergic to zinc? Are you allergic to zinc like from food, or are you just allergic to zinc supplement? Because you don't need to supplement zinc. You could totally get it from your food. I actually just made a post, like you can go a couple posts back. It's oysters. That's a really good source of zinc. You know, like you can get zinc from food, but I'm not sure. Are you allergic to like all zinc? That would be weird. Like zinc foods as well. That would be really hard. Also, wanted to ask if you think the symptoms of PCOS are reversible in your experience, even if it's been happening for years. I have pretty intense hirsutism, face and body. Yeah, I think a lot of women worry about the hirsutism, and I'll just tell you my experience. And I'll be honest, I never had like awful hirsutism to the point where like I had a beard or anything like that, but I did definitely have some, and I made the mistake, like, see, I didn't know, I had so many PCOS symptoms, but I had gone to the doctor when I was 15, and they had just put me on birth control. I believe I had hypothyroidism then, and that's why I actually had really long periods. I was bleeding for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and so that's why like I told my mom when I was like 14 or 15, and it was like she was worried, and so of course she took me to the doctor, and the doctor, I still remember at that point her saying like, you have low progesterone, I'm gonna put you on a progesterone pill. And of course you think like, okay, great, like yay, you know, and I didn't realize, like, of course now I know, hindsight 2020, that was synthetic progesterone. And so I look back now and I absolutely know I had hypothyroidism symptoms then. I remember being constipated from the time I was like 10, you know, and so I had estrogen dominance. I wasn't detoxing very well, and it's leading to, thyroid issues. And then by the time I was 15, my period's coming, long, bleeding, have low progesterone. And so what do? Like, I get put on the pill, which makes everything worse. And I do remember, I've always been a very stressed out person. I was a stressed out kid. I had some traumatic things that occurred. And so I think that played a role. But that was a long way of saying that, like, I was struggling with PCOS symptoms by the time I was 15, 16, 17, and I didn't realize they were symptoms of anything. Like, I was like, I guess adults, like, start to grow beards and, like, hair between their boobs, and so I just started shaving those things, you know? So I had really bad hirsutism in between my breasts, on my belly button, which I still actually kind of struggle with sometimes when I'm stressed out. It's really interesting. I'll have, like, black hairs, like, pop out when I'm stressed, and I know, like, okay, I'm not eating enough, or like my body's really stressed out, I'm not sleeping enough. And so that's really like an interesting thing. Also, like I'll sometimes have them on my breast, not so much anymore, but I did have, you know, around the nipples. Like that's definitely, sorry, like TMI, but you know, it's one of those things where I just want you guys to know that like I've struggled with it too. I understand it's not something that is easy to struggle with, and I am more fair skinned and like have light hair, so my beard was much more peach fuzz like than actually like dark, thick, coarse hairs. But I did over time start to see it get thicker and coarser. And so it has come to a point where it's not so much of a struggle anymore. I'll sometimes get maybe one hair that pops up on my chest, like, you know, every couple of months. Like I said, on my belly button, sometimes on my breast. But overall, not my hirsutism, I could absolutely say it has reversed in severity. I wouldn't say like it's healed miraculously, but it's definitely based always upon what stress I'm putting my body under. And the severity of it has definitely gone away. The hair loss severity has definitely gone away. You know, the struggle with my weight so much has definitely gone away. Like I'll fluctuate between like 15-ish pounds depending on how stressed I am, but it's not like I just gain weight uncontrollably, you know? And I would say my symptoms are now like kind of the other symptoms I experienced, like anxiety, you know, kind of being like moody, headaches. I used to have daily headaches that went away. So most of my symptoms, I would say, like PCOS wise, compared to what I looked like, you know, 8 years ago, oh my gosh, like nothing. But that was just me like not really worrying about, oh, I have PCOS, hypothyroidism, lupus, Hashimoto's, celiac disease. I mean, like guys, I like had literally like when I got my diagnosis, I had like 15 things. It was just like boom, 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 boom. And it was just like, it was overwhelming at first, and I really fumbled a lot, which is why I know so much, because I've done so much that did not work. And I've been in your shoes like so many times because I've tried everything. And I'm the type of person, I'm just like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. Like I never give up. And so I've gotten to a point where it's like I've really made a lot of mistakes, and I wouldn't call them mistakes. It's just more like it doesn't really, there's certain things that just don't work, and there's certain things that do. And so I couldn't say for sure like your hirsutism is going to reverse, but I do know that taking stress off the body does prevent, you know, your skin from getting too androgen. So what happens is like when DHEA is high in the skin and there's a lot of stress on the body, it can turn into something called DHT, which is that really powerful form of testosterone. Also, some women with PCOS have normal levels of testosterone, but they're pushing it down that really powerful androgenic pathway, and it's very potent and powerful. So, you know, when you lower stress off the body and you give it time, a lot of times miraculous things do take place. It just does take time. And I never like woke up and said like, wow, you know, the hair between my breasts is gone. But I did at one point say like, wow, I've had less hair, you know, like, oh, I've got less, you know, like, oh, there's less, you know. So over time you do start to see changes, but it's not like miraculous. It takes day after day, and sometimes it's exhausting, you guys. Like it's like I have to continuously take care of myself over and over, but it's such a good reminder, because I always think of PCOS as kind of like that wake up call. Like the body has just been under stress for too long, and sometimes it's passed down. Like our mother was under stress and it was imprinted onto us in the womb, and we had no control over it. We kind of started in a deficit, and so by the time we went through puberty, we were already miles behind. And of course we can have that kind of victim mindset and say like, poor me, like, oh yeah, but it's kind of one of those things where like, well, it is what it is, so how am I going to move forward? And that is kind of, you know, it's just day after day, baby steps. And so it's hard to say like, you know, hirsutism can heal, but I've seen things happen that are kind of miraculous. It just takes time. Sorry, that was like a long like speech. Thoughts on homemade pasta. Well, what wheat are you making out of it? You know, foods aren't good or bad. It's just what are the ingredients. If you're making it with fortified iron wheat, but if you're doing like einkorn wheat, that's heirloom, or like spelt flour or something like that, awesome. 20 heads, holy lettuce. Could you explain about adrenal fatigue? Is it real? I would say no, but I highly recommend watching my highlight story labeled stress. I talk about adrenal fatigue in that highlight story in depth. Forever thankful to you. Knowledge is power, and I learned so much from you. I appreciate that, and knowledge is power. Absolutely. I have struggle accepting my body now that I'm not skinny, but just I'm my normal weight. Well, who are you comparing yourself to? What are you filling your mind with? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times we're following these Instagram models that don't have their periods, aren't healthy, and comparing our body to them. So that's always the first. I always clean up my social media feed, create an environment where I feel like I'm around women and I'm seeing women that I'm seeing myself in. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel horrible about myself every time I look at my Instagram, or I feel horrible about myself after I hang out with that person. Like, I'm making sure that I'm in an environment that's positive and understanding that my body is the vessel that I'm allowed to pursue my life in. My body is not a marker of my worth. My body is not, it's not anyone's business. It's how I am going to move through my life and make great waves and make great changes. And my body allows me to do that. And I'm appreciative to it for that. Okay, so Instagram's giving me 20 seconds, so I'll finish up. What do you think about the higher fruit diet by Amplified Vitality? I like it. I think fruit can work really well for some people. Okay, sorry guys, Instagram's cutting me off. Thank you so much for joining me. This is going to go up on YouTube, and it will be up for 24 hours. I'll see you soon.